that we are putting on tonight's evening. On the one hand, it's incredible to broadcast the incredible work of Roots to our audience. But on the other hand, of course, times in Israel are difficult at the moment. And I know many of our members share a lot of concerns about the current political situation in Israel. And I guess part of the hope of this evening is to present the work of Roots and other similar organizations who are creating a undercurrent of goodwill and peace within the region, which hopefully their efforts on a grassroots level will bear fruit. When I was thinking about today, I was reflecting on how the festival of Pesach is coming up very soon. And just this morning, we taught our children at Cheder the Manishtana, the 4 questions. And it's interesting how in Judaism, questions are always much more powerful than answers. Because when we ask a question, we learn about the experiences of others rather than understand what we already know to be true. And that is very much the work of Roots, that it's about understanding the other person, their perspectives, even if it can be quite different to our own, to build that mutual understanding, which is so important in a region like Israel, where there is this ongoing conflict. And this work is really pioneering, and it's at a grassroots level. It's not from up above, from the leadership, it's from individuals getting to know their neighbors and understand the conflict, but also try to resolve it and make agreements between them. And this is the hope for the future. And I'm very, very much looking forward to hear from the speakers, to show a video of their excellent work. And it is very much hoped that we can develop a good relationship with Roots in the coming years and months ahead to understand more about their work, and with the hope that we can all be part of building a better future and better tomorrow. I'd like to introduce Rabbi Shaul and Khaled, who are both co-founders of Roots. Rabbi Shaul lives in Tekoa. He is a rabbi who has a keen interest in music and farming. I have a keen interest in music, but I'm not much of a farmer myself. So I'll have to take a few tips from you on that one. And Khaled, who also lives in the settlements and has won a UNESCO prize for promotion of non-violence and tolerance, and has been named one of the 500 most influential Muslims by the Royal Islamic Strategic Studies Center. And as you will hear, his family has been greatly affected by the conflict. And I think for many of our audience this evening, in particular, our youth club who are watching from the synagogue this evening, it will be an opportunity to hear different perspectives. Many of you may not have heard from a rabbi in the settlements. Many of you equally may not have heard from a Palestinian in the settlements. And tonight is about trying to build that mutual understanding and hear different perspectives. And of course, we will open up to questions at the end. If you do have any questions throughout the talk, please do put them in the chat, and I will try and moderate the question and answer session towards the end. And I do ask, of course, I appreciate that all the audience may have different points of view, but tonight is about understanding. So if you do have a difference of opinion, let it be aired in a question and answer in a respectful manner. It gives me great honor. Before we begin with our speeches tonight, I would like to just share a video of some of the works of Roots, and I'll share their video, just a couple of minutes, which will give you a bit of an insight as to the wonderful grassroots level work that they do.
אנחנו נמצאים כאן באדמה של המשפחה שלי. כשבאתי לכאן והחלטתי להקים מרכז פלסטיני שלי אלימות. אני מצפה שיתקפו אותי גם בחברה שלי וגם באוכלוסייה של המתנחלים. אבל אני יודע, כל עוד שאנחנו לא מדברים עם הימין, השמאל לא יעשה שלום.
The first time I had heard someone talk about being in Israeli jail, someone talking about suffering under occupation.
וזה שאני מכבד אותך, זה הכבוד שאני מכבד את עצמי כשאני מסתכל על עצמי בראי.
We believe that religion has to be part of the solution.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Adonai hu Elohim.
יהודים ניצודים בארץ ישראל כמו חיות, ממש. פשוט צדים אותם. רואים רכב, איפה הם? איפה השותף? איפה האח?
אתה יושב על הכלכלה שלי, אתה יושב על הבית שלי, אתה יושב על הלב שלי, אבל לא כשותף.
האם אתה מוכן להודות שהישיבה שלך פה היא ישיבה של פשע? וממילא תגיד לי מבחינה פוליטית.
The Jewish people, that we own this land? We don't own this land. We belong to this land. And the Palestinian people also belong to this land.
אנחנו האחרונים בעולם שצריך לשבת אחד עם השני. באתי לבקש לדרוש איתם מחברים. מפני שאת ואני סבלנו שלא חיפשנו את זה לפני.
Thank you, Chaim. We'll jump in. Chaim, can you hear me?
Yes.
Everyone.
Perfect.
Okay, great. So first of all, thank you so much to the Vision community for inviting us and for the beginning of this relationship. It's an honor to be with you, and thank you for making the time to come hear us. We're going to share, Khaled and myself, I'll share a bit about how we got to what we're doing, and why we're doing it in a sense, and then open up for, like I said, conversation, question and answer. And indeed, tense times. It's on these, in Israeli politics right now, where society is really being torn apart. I have a group of friends of mine who started a hunger strike today for purely the internal Israeli mess that's going on, judicial reform and the protests and just increasing tensions. But we're not here to talk about that. The video we saw there, that was a documentary film about the beginning of our project, Roots, that was filmed between 2014 and 2016. Although many things in there feel like they're exactly the same today. The question of partnership, question of, in that closing scene, Ali, Khaled's younger brother, was speaking in a house of an Israeli home, saying we need to talk. We're the last people in the world who have talked, and it's time we talked. And as I got into this work of Israeli-Palestinian meeting and grappling and grappling with identity on the other side and the reality, and it maybe seems this absurd looking from abroad, but how can people who live in the same exact space have relatively no idea about what the other side's most basic understandings of themselves are, most basic questions and in experiences in this conflict are completely unavailable in some way. And Roots' first goal is understanding, a deep sense that we Palestinians and Israelis don't understand each other. We don't understand what this land means for each other. We don't understand why the other side acts like they do. We don't understand, and sometimes I feel we, just like we don't know how to make peace, we don't even know how to make war effectively. So Khaled and I are both going to share a bit of our personal stories here, and then we'll talk about what Roots does. But I always say the conflict is not between Shaul and Khaled. If we have our good days and our bad days, but it's not because we as individuals don't get along. It's because we, in our collective identities, and the things that binds my people to this land, the things that binds Khaled's people to this land, and what that connection has brought us over the years is what's holding this conflict. Khaled doesn't live in a settlement. Khaled lives in a Palestinian town called Beit Umar. He can't enter a settlement, just like for me it'd be very complicated to enter Beit Umar. And so I'm going to tell a little bit of my story, how I got here, why I live here, and Khaled did the same. And then, so I was actually born in London, not far from you. Originally a Cockney, but we lived in London for 8 months, so that didn't last so long. My family then moved to the United States. I grew up in the United States. But I think as immigrants to the U.S., always with the questioning of where we're from. You know, we're not from. We spent 3 years living in England, and a question of where we is. Israel always felt like home. The one place in the world I can say our people feel home. And as a child, going to those rallies for the Jewish people, if it was in the Soviet Union or in Ethiopia, or when the first Intifada broke out here, always a sense of connection, meaning. And when I was a teenager, the Oslo Peace Accords were signed, and many of you probably remember it was a time of hope. It was a time of a sense of maybe this conflict will end. Maybe there's a partner, someone that besides recognizing us, we're recognizing them. And life went on. I moved here in the year 2000, kind of seeking what does Judaism look like here in our homeland, and was completely blown away, completely astounded by the project of the state of Israel, what it means for our people, and many things happened there. But I arrived here in the year 2000, and just as I got here, the second Intifada broke out. Second Palestinian was in 2000, right? People remember that Rosh Hashanah. I remember I was in kibbutz at the time, and we had the holiday free from kibbutz, so I went down to Jerusalem to experience the holiday. And getting off the bus in Yerushalayim, I heard ambulances and sirens, every which unit and forces and police forces all rushing down to the old city. And it was the day after when Ariel Sharon had gone onto the Temple Mount, right, to the Al-Aqsa compound, to make a very provocative statement about who Jerusalem belongs to. And looking back on the conflict now, I understand better what was going on there. If we look back the last 100 years of conflict, almost every major round of violence started in Jerusalem, from 1929 right to 1936, 1996, the Kotel tunnels, 2000, of course, what became then called the Al-Aqsa, the second Intifada. And very quickly, life became here life on the ground is very different. One thing I just want to share, I think, everyone around the world, Jewish, of course, and Muslim or Palestinian or Arab around the world looking at this conflict, reads it and sees it in the headlines and sees it through family experiences, through visits. It's very different on the ground. I say the conflict's not taking place between Israelis and Palestinians. That's much too abstract. For Israelis and Palestinians, it takes place between a group called us and a group called them. Those lines are very clearly drawn. How you look, what car you drive determines what you experience driving down the road here. Like my car has a yellow license plate, and Khaled can attest to this. When you drive through some of the roads here in my car, sometimes you have Palestinian children throwing rocks at you. If I was to drive in Khaled's car and come into my town, I wouldn't be let in because there's no Palestinian cars allowed into my town. So us and them is a very clear, very visceral experience. It's not a theoretical. When there's rockets falling and the siren goes off, we know that's them attacking us. And I know for Palestinians, when a unit of army soldiers come into a Palestinian village, that's them coming after us. I was in Jerusalem for the holiday, and after Rosh Hashanah finished that year, we had the bus ride back to kibbutz, and we got stopped on the road because there was rock throwing. Then my first 5 months on kibbutz, we were studying Hebrew, and we had our job to be in the classroom at 8 a.m. every morning, turn on the radio broadcast, and translate the words. And of course, the words here in 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, it seemed like every hour the broadcast was wounded, attacked, suicide bombing, rockets, stabbing, helicopter. The second Intifada approaches and takes over life here for several years. And I really think anybody looking to ask the question of peace building in this conflict today has to really examine what happened in our societies in that period of time, from 2000 to 2003. Because one of the dark, the more pessimistic elements of the conflict today is both Israelis and Palestinians can tell you, we tried to make peace. We signed Oslo. We were willing to concede homeland, territory, all kinds of things. And look what we got. Look what the other side did. They broke the agreements. They sent suicide bombers. They kept on building settlements. And each side has all of our talking points. And so for me, after that time, from 2003, of course, my opinions about the conflict changed. And many people's opinions about the conflict changed. You know, if you read the polling today in Palestinian or Israeli society, and you ask, where is the support for peace, right? Israel just had an election a few months ago. Again, not such big news anymore. But, you know, where's the peace camp? Where's those peace parties that believe in peace? They're not even in the Knesset, some of them. The hope for peace has really become a word that's really relegated to our tefillot, to our prayers. And the reality of politics, nobody talks about returning to the peace process. What peace process, right? If you're a Palestinian or Israeli examining the last 30 years of peace process, you see anything but. You know, suicide bombings never happened before the peace process. The Israeli society never, right? Before the peace process, Israelis sometimes had rocket fire from the northern border, and today Hamas is, I think there were rockets fired last night. They're capable of closing down a third of our country with rocket fire. I know for many Palestinians, remember before the peace process, access to Jerusalem, taking your children to swim in the sea wasn't a big deal. But today, a Palestinian child in the West Bank, in Judea, Samaria, a Palestinian kid growing up in Hebron has never been to the sea because it's impossible to get to the sea. There's only entrance permits for workers who have security clearances, but not for kids to go swimming. So the experience of the conflict from both sides has been anything but. If we want to question the peace process, we have to think about partnership. And I think one of Ruth's focus is this question of partnership. Who's our partner? And obviously, looking on a Zoom conversation with all of you, I have no idea what news sources you go to and what you read and what people's political views are. But I'll tell you, if somebody here I imagine knows who Israel signed Oslo Accords with, and the major Palestinian party that were partners in the agreement, it's the Fatah party. I might be a peace guy, but you know, Hamas, okay, Hamas is not the peace partner. Fatah is the moderate party, right? I'm sure you visited their Facebook page recently. Well, you haven't actually, because it was removed from Facebook for incitement. There was a picture of a knife with blood dripping over the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So as an Israeli looking for my partner, meanwhile, of course, Palestinians look at Israel's government, and we see people like Benjamin Netanyahu, your partner for peace. But I'll tell you, there's other ministers in current government and recent governments who wouldn't even pronounce the word Palestine because it's a lie. There's Arabs. There's no such thing as a Palestinian identity. So I can imagine as a Palestinian trying to make peace negotiating with a minister who won't even pronounce your name because he says it's a lie. So I think both sides at this point are convinced there's no partner for peace. There's no peace process. And what do we have? So we try to examine what kind of conflict is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. You know, is it a political conflict? Is it a nationalist struggle? Is it an ethno-national struggle? Is it a territorial? Is it a religious conflict? And I want to share something. We hosted a group at our center about a month ago, and I was a visiting professor said something very wise, I think. She said, you know, when I first studied the conflict, I studied international relations and realized I have a lot of history to follow up on to understand how we got here. So she studied history. Then she realized the place of religion, and she started studying religion. So she said, but I really should have been studying all along the psychology. Psychology? That's not a serious thing. Why? I'll tell you, because if I look at myself, why did my opinions change from somebody, of course, who wants peace, who's willing to have to make compromise, that's the only way to get peace, to somebody who really says, over my dead body? What happened there? And I want to phrase it, I think what kind of conflict is it? I think many Israelis and Palestinians experience the conflict as an existential struggle, a very question of survival. Let me explain what I mean by that on a psychological level. This afternoon, this evening, there was an attack. There was a shooting on an Israeli car. He just knows that it's an Israeli. Is the connection okay? I see it's making a sign. Yeah. Meaning the person was shot in that car not because of who they are, because of what they are. And if it would have been me in that car, If it would have been my cousin driving down that road who goes there every other day, if it would have been my daughter on a school trip, it would have been her. So every single attack that happens out there, I think we all experience it in some way on ourselves psychologically. And I know this on the Israeli side, and I've heard many Palestinians share exactly the same feeling. Something about the psychology, I'll say, for me, we can talk about religion or political issues and nationalist struggles, identities, but at the end of the day, for me, the core of the conflict for many people is fear. Fear. It's a very human emotion. It's what it's like when a siren goes off and you know that you have 20 or 30 or 60 seconds to run to a bomb shelter and grab your kids on the way. It's driving down a road where you don't know what's around the corner and you're scared about if there's rock throwing or what's going to happen. And I think I'm imagining as a Jewish audience, it was, in the 2000s, getting on a bus and seeing a Palestinian man get on the bus, going home after work. He's got a backpack on. He puts his hand in his pocket, and you're ready to jump if he's going to pull something. That's Israeli fear. I'm sure we can imagine it. Palestinian also. We had an event at Roots a few months ago. Our center is located near a major junction, and there was a lot of attacks and violence that happened there a few years ago. It's a site which experiences attacks every now and then. And one of the Palestinian members of Roots was just saying, he lives in the Hebron area, but he works in Bethlehem, and his kids go to school there. So he says, after work, I pick up my kids and I drive home. She says, every time I come past this junction, I can't help it, but my palms start sweating on the wheel. My heart beats fast, and I hold the. He's this big guy. I said, I hold the wheel with all my strength. I said, why? He said, if the car in front of me would stop suddenly and I have to swerve, or if there's a rock in the road and I'd swerve and come out my lane, the soldiers might think I'm trying to ram them, and they have no time to react, and they'd shoot and I'd be dead. Because I can't help it. I know it's. He says. I said the odds that are happening, nothing. But fear. I want to say fear is a very irrational thing. You pass by somebody who's different than you. So fear, I want to say, is a core of this conflict, because every time we go to vote, that fear is there. Every time we think about things, it's the fear of what would happen. Anger. Anger is also a part of a violent conflict. And I think for myself, of course, anger is not pretty. We're a rabbi. We're supposed to be higher people. But in 2009, there's an attack in my town. And a young Jewish boy, a neighbor of a son of ours, was killed by a Palestinian attacker. 12-year-old boy. And I remember in that attack, something just snapped. Don't call, and people were calling this freedom fighting. This is the murder of a child. And that anger is very real, and anger is very powerful. And I have a simple equation that says fear plus anger equals hate. And when I hear young Israelis or Palestinians talking about their hateful side, it's easy to judge and say, how can you be such a hateful person? But when I go back, and that fear is very real, it's a very natural thing to feel. The things that people experience here on an ongoing basis are reasons for anger. So that was where I was stuck 10 years ago. And a few months after that attack, I was sitting, it was Shabbat, and I was reading a commentary, a Parsha on the week, right? I was reading the commentary. And the commentary said something like this. It was quoted from the Jewish Talmud, the Gemara. And the Gemara says somewhere that kol ha'ko'es, that anyone who gets angry, ki'ilu oved avodah zarah. It's as if they're worshiping an idol. And I looked at it and I thought, what do you mean anger is like idolatry? Anger is a natural emotional response. Idolatry is the biggest no-no in the book, right? Rav Chaim can tell you. Anger is idolatry. And they say one of the reasons why the Hasidic Jews, we wear our peyot, is to connect your head down to your heart. That means if intellectually I read a piece about anger and in my heart I feel anger, that means I have work to do there. And it hit me, and I realized that work, and that anger sometimes determines how I see people, maybe treat people. I realize sometimes I go to vote, and maybe it's that anger that's voting for me. And the commentary went on and said, anger, like idolatry, has no place in the camp of Israel, in this Jewish society I dream of building here, which for me is the project of Israel. But I know I kind of talked a lot about the emotional side of things, but I really think they're a very critical part, because when I think about my neighbors who live here around me, Israelis or Palestinians, and you want to talk about peace, the first thing you're talking about is a world of trauma, of experiences, of near misses, of what it feels like every day when the alert comes in and there's an attack on the road. And for Palestinians and Israelis living a violent conflict, that's where it is. The other question, I'll go a little bit deeper, I guess, to the ground underneath my feet right now. I'm calling in from Tekoa, which is where Amos the prophet lived. It's just outside of Bethlehem. And if anybody's ever visited by the Herodian, it's well over the Green Line. But there's no more Eretz Israel there's no more Israel than where I'm standing right now. Outside of my house there's remnants of Jewish life here in the first temple period. There's a giant mountaintop that was built by the Jewish King Herod just down the road here. I mean, for God's sake, this part of the land is called Judean Mountains, and my father's name is Judah. My great-grandfather's name is Judah. There's no more Israel than here. But excuse me, Mr. Shaul Judelman, you're across the Green Line. If you're outside of Bethlehem, if this is Israel, then what's left of Palestine? Well, what do you mean? Maybe there is no Palestine. So this question, and let's say it the other way around. When you look at the roots of Palestinian national identity, the first writings about a Palestinian national consciousness, they weren't written in Ramallah or in Hebron. They were written in Jaffa, because Jaffa really was the intellectual hub of this land 100 years ago when those writings came out, and a little more than that. But Jaffa is Palestine? You can't say that. That's like Hamas. But if you go into any single Palestinian home, you're going to find a map of Palestine. And ironically, it's exactly the same map as my map of Israel. We've got a problem. One of the things we do at Roots is we host a lot of young Israelis, 18-year-olds, before they go to the military. And a few months ago, Khaled and I were speaking, and this young woman asked a question. She asked us, "Oh, Khaled, you guys are thinking about the conflict a lot. What do you think is the greatest mismanagement of this conflict by our leaders?" And I said, but the fact that after 100 years of conflict, to say that Hebron is Israel as a Palestinian, you can't say that. Or to say that Jaffa is Palestine as an Israeli, you can't say that. Well, of course we can't solve the conflict. We still can't even speak in a way that respects the basic tenets of the other side's identity. So I'm also calling into you across the street from the home of my late rabbi, who presented with the way out of this conflict, of this particular part of the conflict at least. His name is Rabbi Menachem Froman, and I'll write in the chat a link. You can follow, find some information more about him. But about 45 years ago, they created a new kibbutz. It was a settlement between Jerusalem and Hebron. And Rabbi Menachem and his wife Hadassah entered the home. He was honored with being the rabbi of the town, and his wife, his widow now Hadassah, shared the story with me. I mentioned that in the video clip at the beginning. I kind of paraphrased it. Hadassah entered the house, and she said, 1977, this is 4 years after the Yom Kippur War. She said, I walked in that home with a sense of coming back, of making Jewish life where it all began between Yerushalayim and Hebron, part of Jewish history again. She said, but I turned around and saw my husband was standing outside the door. And she said, Menachem, come in. They want to take the picture. And he said, I can't. I said, you can't? What do you mean? This is the Jewish dream, the Zionist dream. We're home, we're back. He said, I can't walk in this house. She said, what's wrong? He pointed at the door. And she walked outside and looked on the door. There was a simple bumper sticker with the slogan of the movement. He said, Menachem, this is why we're here. On the bumper sticker, it said that the land of Israel belongs to the people of Israel. It's our land. Where else are we supposed to go? Our homeland, the one place in the world. And he said, no, I'm not going in. She said, what do you want me to do? Take down the sticker? They're gonna laugh at us. And he said, no, hold on a second. He went to the sticker and rearranged it. And he rearranged my Zionism, because the sticker now read that the people of Israel belong to the land of Israel. But I think Rabbi Froman, as a very devout person, asked the question, if I'm building a home here, I'm standing before the Creator. When I stand before the Creator, I don't say this is mine. And I think if there's something that Judaism, Islam, and Christianity could all agree upon, it's about who this land actually belongs to. God's land. And God's infinite, inestimable wisdom has placed all of us here to deal with it and try to figure our way forward. But I think that understanding was something very powerful, to reframe how we understand our connections to this land in a way that shifts this whole Israel. I don't know what it's like in England. I hear bad things. The Israel-Palestine thing on campuses, I've heard it's pretty bad, because we're arguing over who's the outsider, who's illegitimate, instead of recognizing both people's belonging to the entire land. To start us, we'll talk about politics later, but if we can't recognize that both peoples belong here, then we're fighting the wrong battle in a sense. We're doomed to failure. So through Rabbi Shulman, that's what opened up for me a whole new way of looking. And instead of building my Judaism or my Zionism in a way that denies Palestinianism, it's the opposite. My Zionism needs to encounter, engage, and internalize, in a sense, Palestinianism. And I'm going to pass over to Khaled now. Through Rabbi Shulman, who was meeting with Palestinian leadership already 20, 30 years ago, I started meeting Palestinians in my region, in the town next door. And roots for me began with the question of, we can't solve the whole conflict right now. But that doesn't mean we don't have responsibility for what's going on in our towns with our kids, in our region, between this village and this village, and what we do on the roads and what happens here. And once you meet a partner from the other side, all of a sudden you realize, wait a second, they're not all supporting attacks. And when a friend of mine, his brother was killed, and a group of Palestinians we'd started to meet asked to visit the Shiva. And to bring a Palestinian delegation to come sit at a Shiva in a settlement was a very real, courageous. And I said, here's a partner, and here's a partner. So 9 years ago, somebody recommended we meet the Abu Awwad family, and I'll pass on to Khaled too, and he'll explain to you a little bit why, on their path in Palestinian rights and freedom, how it met with ours. Khaled, I'll put myself on quiet now.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum salam.
Good evening. My name is Khaled Abu Awwad. I'm one of the founder of Roots. I'm a Palestinian, I'm a Muslim, I'm a religious person, and I believe what I'm doing is on the right way to change the reality here, to give both of us and our coming generation a better future. This is my main goal. 9.5 years, small group of Palestinian and Israel Jewish met in our land in Gush Etzion, in the junction of Gush Etzion, 7 from each side, that we all used to live near each other, but we know nothing about each other. And the first meeting, it's just a meeting between people who want to know more, to hear more. Who are you? How is your life? What do you want? What's your job? What you are doing in your life? And like this initiative that start between 2 small groups became one of the main initiatives in the region. We start in Gush Etzion, the first circle of dialogue for Roots. And from here, we went to the Jordan Valley. We established the next circle between Nahran and Jericho, Ojal, and Al-Bayda. And then from Nahran, we went up to the Shomron, Nablus, Salfit, Ariel, and we established the third circle of dialogue between the 2 people of us. And from there, we went back to the south of Hebron. We have a physical place. We have a Palestinian group. We're still looking to have an Israel partners there. It's not easy. It's very difficult, but we will do it. Why we are doing this? Why we believe that this is the way? For me, Khaled, I think this is the only way. If we want seriously to have a solution for this ugly conflict that cause all of us a high price from our happiness, from our life, our children's life, our daily life. I born as a son of a refugee Palestinian family. The story of my family with the conflict starts since 1948. My family originally came from a village called Khubaybet ibn Awwad. Khubaybet ibn Awwad, they call it nowadays Lachish, Kiryat Gad, Lachish, Amatzia. If you hear these names, from there, my family came in 1948. My father came to Gush Etzion, to where we are, to where I am now. I'm sitting in Gush Etzion in my home, in my land, where we have also this initiative, the Roots Initiative. So we used to live here. My father started the second station in the history of my life, of my family, here. I born here, and we used to live here until 1967. 1967, the Six-Day War. We became refugee for the next time. Because of the war, my father took us and we left to Jordan. We spent 2 weeks in Jordan. And when the war came down, my father, as other hundreds of Palestinian families, decided to come back home. They told us how they crossed the Jordan River back home. The Gush Etzion at that time, Gush Etzion became a military area. So my father went to the village around, and in Beit Umar, where we are living here, he rented a house. And there we grown, me, my brothers, my sisters. We grown with a lot of questions. Why we are refugee? While my father and my grandfather have a lot of land in Kobebe, a house, everything, and we have nothing now. We are living in a rent house. We have no piece of land. We have nothing. Who do that to us? Israel, the Israel state. They are our enemy. They have no right here. We should fight them. With this, we grown until 1987. 1987, the first Palestinian Intifada start. We, as a family, me, my brothers, my sisters, led by our mother. Her name is Fatima. Her nickname is Yusuf. She's very known in between the Palestinian leadership. We became part of the leadership of the Intifada against Israel. And this has put us face to face with the Israel security system. And this is caused to all of us to be arrested. Our mother spent 6.5 years in the Israel jail. I spent 1.5 years, my brother 4 years, my sister 1 year. 1993, the first peace agreement had been signed between us and Israel. Agreement that we as a family, we as part of the Palestinian leadership, we accept and agree and respect and support the agreement. For us, the meaning of the agreement that we are two people who have been fighting each other, and now until we reach the point that we both accept and sign an agreement, and that's it. We should close the page of fighting, and we should open a new page that we both live with each other or side by side in peace. This is how we understand the peace agreement. So we support, we accept, and we said, that's it. We trust our two political leadership. They will continue the negotiation until they finish all the process of peace. And our resistance should stop. We are stopping all our political activities, and we return back to live as other Palestinian families, working, studying, rebuilding ourselves after 7 or 8 years of fighting. And we have patient, we believe that the peace will succeed. We watch the situation up and down, and we still have a hope until 2000, 16th of November 2000, when an Israeli military group entered to the village of Beit Umar, where we are living, and they shot one of the people of Beit Umar. His name is Khaled Abu Awwad, 31 years old. He's a father of a 3-year-old daughter, 1-year-old son. He's my brother. An Israel soldier killed him face by face. When they tell us that my brother had been killed, the first thing, why? What did he do? For what? Who killed him? And where's the peace? This is not what we are waiting for. We are waiting to live with each other in peace. We're not waiting that we will continue killing each other. My brother do nothing. In our culture, we sit when somebody dies. We sit for 3 days. So we set for 3 days for Yusuf. Hundreds of Palestinian people came to us to bring their condolence to us, to my family. Most of them have been okay. Some of them blaming us, like this is what you support Abu Awwad's family. The peace. Those people, the peace is not understandable for them. The only language that they understand is the violence language, the power language. The peace is not talking to them. Of course, we have been busy with what's happened to us. We have no time, no space to think about their notes. We finished the 3 days. And after 1.5 months or 2 months, we got a strange message that a group of Jewish Israel families, they want to come to us to bring their condolence to my family. The first reaction that we said, no way. They killed my brother and they want to come and to say, we are sorry. We don't want to see, we don't want to hear, we don't want to talk with anyone on the other side. Again and again, they send us a Palestinian friend to convince us. They tell us that this group of people, they came with a message of peace. They are against what's happened to you about Awwad's family. They are coming to stand with you, to support you. For such as message, you cannot say no. We said, okay, let's see what they have to say. 6 or 7 Jewish Israel family came to the village of Beit Umar, to my house. They sat in my house and they listened to us. We tell them the story of my brother and how their soldier shot my brother without any reason. All of them show a lot of empathy. Some of them, I've seen their tears. They start crying, something that we didn't expect. We finish, and they also have stories to share us. On the head of that group, a Jewish father, who his son have been kidnapped and killed by Hamas. And within this, he is sitting in my house. While in my eyes, he should be on the other side. He should be on the side who hate us, who are asking to revenge. But to sit in a Palestinian house, to share us his story, to listen to us, this is something strange for me. I said, maybe he lose his mind, or maybe he's something else that I don't understand. He finished, and they join us they share us another story of their life. Story of a father and a mother, 13, 14 years old daughter from Telmont, that one day their daughter with her 2 girlfriends went to Tel Aviv, and in Dizengoff Center, Palestinian with a suicide bomber, he killed 3 of them and other people in the market. The father and the mother, they tell us the story, and they tell us the first moment when they called them to come and to recognize their daughter. The mother also share us with part of the diary of her daughter. When this girl had been alive, she wrote a lot of things in her diary. Good things, sentence and things full of love and respect to everyone in this world. She also mentioned a dream, when it's going to be good between us and our Arab neighbor, and when we can visit each other without fear, without hatred. This is one of the dreams of this girl. Does she deserve to be killed? For what? I ask myself. What did she do? Just because she is a Jewish? The story of this girl stand for me in my head for a deep analysis. I want to understand. Before that meeting, I've been in a place that we are right and they are wrong. And now I've seen that here there's something else. Does this little girl deserve to be killed? Why? Who killed her? This is between me and myself. And I start ask questions and give answers. Palestinian, why did he do that? He do that in the name of the Palestinian right, of the Palestinian freedom, of the Palestinian justice. I'm a Palestinian. What's my opinion? Do I accept that someone do like this in my name? Are we allowed, also if we are, or if we think that we are right, to go out and to hurt the people just because they are from the other side? No, I said to myself, I cannot accept that. We should not behave like this in the name of our right or our justice. A conversation that went out of my head to my family. We want to understand what this meeting do to us. After a long discussion inside my family, Abu Awwad's family, and we are a serious family. Every one of this family is not, they are not easy people. The conclusion that we said that we are two people. And we have a conflict between both of us. And every one of us tell the story of this conflict from his point. And every one of us stand in a place where he is right and the other one is wrong. He's innocent and the other one is guilty. Until we met each other. The moment that we hear the story of the other one, the moment that we will start feel a kind of responsibility that we are not absolutely right, we are not 100% right. Since that meeting, we start to look to how to solve this conflict in a different way. We recognize the power of this kind of meetings. The meeting between the two people of us based on dignity and respect and listening to each other and accepting every one of us the story and the truth of the other one is the most powerful way that can lead us to go out of this circle of violence, of hatred, of fear, of anger that cause us a very high price in the direction of together. We should look what should be done to solve this conflict. Since that day, we establish what together with the same group, the Palestinian Israel Bereaved Family Forum, PCFF. I've been the partner with the same group establishing that forum. I've been the manager of this forum for 6 or 7 years or more maybe. And then we find ourselves in front of a big responsibility inside our society, in the Palestinian society, how we can convince those people, especially the young Palestinian people, to come and to join such as kind of meetings. How they can go over their anger, their pain, and be ready to listen. So 2006, we decided to establish a Palestinian movement. We call it the way, al-tariq, ad-dirh. I said, there is no other way. This is the only way that can bring us out of this circle of violence. And we succeed to reach hundreds of Palestinian people, especially youth, to bring them to be ready to listen to their partner in the other side. And we continue until we start roots. In roots, I'm saying that we signed an agreement in 1993, 30 years ago. Till now, it doesn't work. The Palestinian leadership blaming the Israel leadership. The Israel leadership blaming the Palestinian leadership. And no one say, maybe there is something that should be changed on this agreement. Does this agreement give an answer to the majority of both people, Palestinian and Israel? I think no. I think the agreement try to talk about the border, the people, or the demography problems, but not the needing of the people. When I ask a young Palestinian, 17, 18 years old, 20, 22 years old, what's your dream? And he immediately will say, one of my dreams is to be in the Mediterranean Sea, to sit there for 2-3 hours. Is this a dream or it's a joke? Dream? Anyone in Tel Aviv or in Yafo can be there in 5 minutes. And we here, we are far away, half an hour with the car if you want to go to the sea. How it became a dream for those people? Because until now, he didn't got the opportunity to be there for 1 minute. If I ask Shaul, why you are not going to live in Tel Aviv? Why you want to live in Kuba? And when I read my holy book, the Holy Quran, I can understand the answer that all the history of the Jewish people happened here, not in Tel Aviv, in Hebrew, in Jerusalem, in Nablus. I can understand that. The question is how we can make an agreement that can give an answer to those people. How can I allow those youth to celebrate in the beach of the sea? How we can give an answer to those people who seek to be close to the place where they think they belong, their fathers, their grandfathers, their roots. If we want a real peace, we should give an answer to those people. When I hear that Hamas talking about Hudna and not peace, we should ask why. What's the difference? Why Hudna and not peace? This main question. Peace is something that we build. We need a lot of efforts, a lot to build, efforts and time. To destroy, to damage, it's enough. One crazy person can damage all what we do in 10 years. So how we can be sure that for the future agreement, we have as less enemies or people who disagree. For me, I think the international community, what do you say, Shaul? لسه came to stop?
I think in a few more minutes we'll move to questions.
والله انت شو بدك انت يا زلمه؟ ايه ده؟
بدنا ننام.
بدكم تناموا؟ You want to sleep? Okay, I will stop here. Okay, but one, yes.
No, yeah, finish, then we'll move to question and answer. We'll move to 10. I just want to respect people's time. Also, it's 10:30.
I think all the efforts that have been done the last 30, 40 years to achieve peace in our region, it's all happened out of the place where the peace is. And the place where the peace is have a door, a closed door. And for this door, we need a key. And to this key, I call the belong. Without this key, all our effort, all what we are doing is out. Yes, maybe it's help here or there, but it's not focus. It doesn't succeed to lead us to any point that we can feel a kind of hope that there is an end to this conflict. And the key of belong says that on this land, there are people who call themselves Palestinian. I'm a Palestinian. I born here. I live here. I will die here. I'm not going anywhere. This is my homeland. Like me, there are 4 or 5 millions who think like me. This is their homeland. We belong to this land. Same moment that on this land, there are another people who call themselves the Jewish people, the Israel people, the Zionists, whatever they call themselves. They also, in my eyes, belong to this land. And again, my Holy Quran will tell me and to every Muslim in this world the whole story of the son of Israel, starting from Abraham, Ishmael and Yitzchak, Jacob, the sons of Jacob, Yosef, the story of Yosef, the immigration of Jacob and his sons to Egypt following Yosef, 350 years or 400 years in Egypt. You enter to Egypt as free people and you went out as slaves by the help of God, by sending Moses and his brother to save you from the unbeliever in Egypt, Pharaoh, crossing the sea, 40 years in the desert to treat you, to bring you back from a point or a feeling or a behavior of slave to be free again, because you still have a mission. And God tell us to go back to the Holy Land. King David, King Solomon, Beit HaMikdash, Aron HaKodesh, all these things mentioned in the Quran, and all these things witness that you also, the Jewish people, the son of Israel, belong to this land. The belong of both of us, the recognition of each one of us for the belong of the other one is the key. Recognition based on accepting the fact and the real fact of belong, not from a place that I'm going to do a favorite for you. We will not throw you to the sea, as we said. You will not throw us to the desert, as you said. None of us. Both should continue living here. Can we live together? This is a stupid question. We already living together everywhere, in the street, in the work, everywhere. The question is, or should be, how we can continue living together by respecting each other, giving a place, a space, every one of us, for the life of the other one, without damaging every one of us, the happiness and the future and the life of the other. Stopping the selfish way of thinking that this is mine and only mine. It's for both of us. I will stop here. I'm sorry that I spoke a lot. I'm sorry about my bad English, but this is this is me. This is what I believe, really. My mind, my heart, and I believe also that this is the only way.
Thank you so much, Khaled and Rabbi Shaul, for such heartfelt words, sharing your experiences with us and your extensive experience at trying to improve the situation. I know it's been very emotional personally just to hear your stories and the pain and the trauma and the fear and the anger that you described. It's a different experience, clearly living on the grounds, and hearing that from you today has been a real honor and privilege. And we are so grateful to you for your time and sharing those experiences, which are of course very personal, and making that time and effort to go around the world and spreading your message of peace and tolerance. It's such a valuable work that you do, and we're so glad tonight to be able to partner with you. Now, I'm sure there's many questions that our audience may have. Please do feel free to either message me in the chat or broadcast it generally on the chat, or if you would like to put your hands up on the chat function, and I will try and moderate the questions and answers. Just while you're typing your questions, I would just like to make mention of the fact that this is one event out of many that we have at Richmond Jewish Community Hub. Please do check out us on social media or on the website, and do sign up for our emails and updates for many future events. And of course, the Friends of Roots are a charity that do fantastic work, as you've heard this evening, and they rely on donations. So please do donate on their website, and I'm happy to signpost anyone who would like that.
I just see, maybe Chaim will just say, Rabbi Chaim, just a minute, what is Roots to do on the ground? And just Father and I are two people, we're amongst the directorate of Roots. But Roots at this point is running, like Khaled mentioned at the beginning of his talk, 3 different centers across Judea, Samaria, the West Bank. And I was in our region, which is Bethlehem, Gush Etzion, in the Jordan Valley, and in the northern West Bank. We do 3 kinds of things, I think. We do people-to-people programs. We have young adults, a program, we bring young adults together, women's group, local religious leaders, summer camps, after-school activities, lectures that bring in language classes that bring local B'nai. That's one part of what we do, people-to-people work. The next part is solidarity work. When my neighbors see Palestinians standing up for our needs, or when Khaled's neighbors see us Israelis standing up for their needs on a local basis, starting with them on the most local things, about building rights, about stopping rock throwing, about visiting victims. That's also what we try to do at taking the responsibility in our local region. And the last part is this attempt to change the discourse, shift the discourse to something that can restore legitimacy to peace building. Like what Khaled talked about this needing of belonging, of legitimacy, of seeing both sides as legitimate as the first key. Trying to reinvigorate the peace movement to go back to those basic roots of both sides' identities here. That's what Roots is up to. So and then we'll go back to questions in a conversation, please.
Okay, so we've had quite a few questions come in. I'd like to start with a question that I think is really, cuts to the heart of the work that you do, which is, I think this person who asked the question said that listening to you makes me feel very hopeful and thoughtful, but also fearful, as there are the knowledge that there are people out there who believe in hate and being righteous in their own perspectives. What is your solution, and how do you think it's possible to change people who don't wish to be changed?
So there's a great.
Listen, first of all, I believe I'm now more than 20 years dealing with the issues of reconciliation between the two people of us. And from my experience, from what I've seen in these 22 years, I believe for sure that the majority of both of our people, they are good people. They seek to have peace. They don't want any kind of fighting or violence. And we have a minority of extreme people, or maybe some of them are weak people that they cannot control their anger. Because when we react in an angry way, that represents a kind of weakness. The strong one is the one who can control his anger. So I think in many things, one is we should stop the what I call it al-akhlalot, generalizations. Like if somebody bad, if one is bad or do a bad thing from this side or this side, we start say that they all like this, they all terrorists, they all killers, this should be stopped. If we want to support the majority and to empower them to stand with a kind of believing in themselves. So this is the first step. The second step, I think we should do a mission, an important mission, both of us. When I talk about the belonging of both of us, we both know that in our main identity, there are things that stop us or forbidden us to recognize the belonging of from the recognition of the belonging of the other one. This is the first mission that we should take care and change. For example, one of the examples that I study from the history of Rav Menachem Fruman, Zichrono Livracha. I don't know if you know him. He's one of the very clever rabbis in this area. He knows how to be a Jew, how to be a Zionist, and how to be a human being in the same time. And one day when he said that, when he came to enter to a place where written the sticker of the land of Israel belonged to the people of Israel, he said, no. What should be done? He said, the people of Israel belong to the land of Israel. By this small change, he said, the land belongs to the Kadosh Baruch Hu, to God. By this small change, he solved for us a huge problem. This is our main mission, both to check deeply our identity, our culture, values, and things. This should be changed because one of the problems is distrust. We don't trust each other. And our behavior causes to the other one to continue to be afraid. For me, I said, like when I'm standing in front of a Jewish Israel person, he is not my enemy, his fear is my enemy. How can I deal with this fear? And it's important. The trust is work like this. You trust me when you look to what I'm doing and what I am saying, that something is respect you and respect your life and not מאיים. איך אומרים מאיים, שאול?
Threatening.
Huh?
Threatening. Doesn't threaten the other's identity.
And doesn't threaten your life and your happiness and your, so like this. So we should check all what we are saying and what we are doing.
I draw from Khaled's perspective a lot in that question of how do we face I will say that, the media paints us a picture very different than what most people experience in reality. I don't know if it's like that in England as well. Of course, the media reports again and again on the violence and extremism, but if I look at my neighbors, they're not living such extremist lives. So that's one thing I like to just balance the pessimism that can come from that thought. On the other hand, it's definitely that we need here the work for the long haul. I think this work of local initiatives, of grassroots initiatives, is critical. But at a certain point, we need to think about how do these things come together? How do we affect policies on national levels? And right now, it's definitely a period of time we have to kind of take the long haul. It's not going to happen it's not going to happen quickly with the politics today the way they are. But I get a lot of strength, like when we meet at Roots, we meet lots and lots of young people, Israelis, and I feel very much encouraged by them and seeing the impact of what happens with how they walk away from the conversations with us. So I think that's also important to keep in mind. Yeah.
Okay. I would like to just follow up on that question. We've got another question in the chat that's linked to that. How significant do you feel the current Israeli political situation? How does that play out in terms of your work and building mutual understanding?
So it's funny when you for the way I hear that question today, the current political situation right now is not focused on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, or even the extreme right wing in terms of the conflict. It's with the judicial reform and the protests, and I say it's a very scary timeline right here. Like the level of rhetoric and even acts of violence in the last couple of days between protesters and what's the fabric of Israeli society is very much it's in a very dark place. I will say that, but it's one thing I think is how it does impact, though. Is we have politicians who are fanning the flames on the conflict, are acting like little children in the China room. The elephant, over the right metaphor, the elephants in the China room with the kid playing with matches, instead of responsible people aware of how their actions and their statements impact people. Yes, we have a conflict with raging emotions and fear, and vengeance is an emotion that can come up here. But when you have politicians who, instead of leading us to be our better selves, play into that, extort that, it's exhort that. It's definitely, it's a very dangerous situation, both internally on the internal Israeli society, and of course vis-a-vis Palestinians. So it's going to be a challenge to go through this government. I can point out one point of hope about that. I think, like just observing here, is that I think we're seeing a severe, I'd like to say, a strong reawakening of a moderate religious voice that's recognizing, wow, people like Ben Gvir and Smotrich are defining what it is to be Jewish. That's not our Judaism. So I can think on a local level in my town, there's someone for rebuttal. I think also sometimes those extremist voices, when they come into the government, into the coalition, all of a sudden they're not opposition voices. And I hope there's some process of moderation that goes up on there. But it really is it is a scary way. That influencing with what's going on the ground is definitely a recipe for some disaster. On that we can use your prayers.
Okay. And I guess, what about you, Khaled? What's your perspective as a Palestinian with the current situation?
It's like nothing new. We know that from time to time it's going up and down. The challenge is not this. The challenge is, are we going to give to this reality to win us, or we for example, during this situation, we have a marathon in Jericho, and they ask me, because the same day morning, 3 or 4 Palestinians being killed by the Israel army, shooting and killed. They asked me, are we going to do the activity of the marathon in the Jordan Valley? I think for a couple of minutes, and I said yes, because this is the best and the most powerful way to, this is the most power answer to what's happened in Nablus and everywhere, to this reality, that we are together, we are not giving up, we will not let you hitch us to this circle. We are out of this circle. We succeed to be out, and we will continue to be out. One day when I have a meeting with the small kids, summer camp, in the center here, we are 150 meters from the junction, and a violence happened on the junction, and the kids start looking from the windows because they hear the ambulance and all this noise. And they start ask, what's happening? What's going on here? When I said, close the windows. Let's be quiet for a moment. Listen, what you've seen now, this is the reality. What we are doing here is to change it. Let's continue what we are doing together. This is how I seen the things.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you, Khaled. I guess there's a couple of comments that have come in just saying thank you to both of you and expressing how important your work is, and also I guess expressing the fact that ultimately the people who really need to hear your talk are people in Israel, and how do you go about that work, spreading the message to people on the ground?
So at our center, we're hosting many groups. I said this last week hosted almost 4,500 young Israelis, like high schoolers or 18-year-olds, and then different people involved. So of course, there's Khaled is about 17 different kinds of people running different programs, the different branches. A little bit going in the media, although we're very cautious about media work. It's oftentimes your words are taken out of context, and we're very cautious about how we go about media. We're also part of a larger consortium of Israeli-Palestinian groups working together in this field. I think our model though is really about this very local-based work. Meaning we're not running after national politicians. I'd say we're running after local politicians, regional council members or mayors or people there. With the sense that the conflict can be very disempowering when you look at everything that's going on. And our model is let's take it down to the local level in this town and this town and this town and work on that level to build things up. And it's something we learned from in Northern Ireland, that there was this tremendous investment in local leaders and in small community groups that laid the groundwork for the Good Friday agreements, and finally the politicians come in. But there was this basis of support. And I think that was one of the lessons to learn back from the Oslo Peace Accords, where they tried to do the top-down approach of the leaders down, but we need that work from the bottom up. Now, of course, an education minister can do a lot more impact with their policies than in our programs. But I think it's also a model we're doing. So we're constantly trying to grow, building partnerships with organizations. I think also as much as we're doing our own work, it's trying to inspire others to take on the same kind of work in the region. So yeah.
Fantastic. There is a question here about whether we can provide recordings, because I think people really want to hold on to what's been discussed tonight, and I'm sure we will be able to find a way of sending that round.
Yeah, I will send it to everyone after the meeting. Everyone who registered, they will receive.
And I just, again, from the bottom of my heart, I want to say a big thank you to Rabbi Shaul and to Khaled again for giving us your time. I appreciate the hour is very late in Israel, so it's very kind of you to give of your time, and Yasher Kochacha for all your efforts and for all your hard work. It's so valuable, and we wish you much success in the future with all your important work.
Thank you, Chaim. Thank you.
Shukran.
I put the website in the chat. Anybody wants to follow up with questions? I know it is getting late, but anybody's welcome to write. The Rabbi Chaim has didn't have a message. What's it called? An email. So really feel free to be in touch on the further ways. And thank you for hosting us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Shalom aleichem. Shalom. Khaled, I'll see you in the morning, bright and early. Good night.